Rain-slicked glass reflects the neon scandal ticker as Melanie Miller stands paralyzed on the Manhattan sidewalk. The heavy charcoal wool of her blazer feels like lead armor against the biting autumn wind. Inside the boardroom of Miller & Associates, her 10-year legacy is being shredded by a silent vote. She grips her leather briefcase until her knuckles turn a ghostly, bloodless white. Her name flashes in crimson letters across the skyscraper's digital skin, marking her professional death. A security guard blocks the revolving door, his gaze fixed firmly on the horizon to avoid her eyes. Melanie's reflection is distorted by a sudden, violent surge of downpour, blurring her features into a smudge. The world she built on perfection is dissolving into a gray, watery grave of public disgrace. She is no longer the predator of the trading floor. She is the prey being cast out. A sleek, black sedan pulls to the curb, cutting through the spray like a silent shark. The rear door of the sedan opens, revealing a pair of polished Oxfords hitting the wet asphalt. Marcus Thorne steps out, his presence immediately stilling the chaotic energy of the street. He doesn't carry an umbrella, letting the rain bead on his bespoke navy shoulders without flinching. Melanie watches him approach, her breath hitching as the industry's most powerful titan nears her. He stops inches away, his shadow engulfing her smaller frame against the glass wall. His eyes are deep wells of stoic calm, betraying nothing of the corporate storm he's about to enter. Without a word, he holds the door open, gesturing for her to re-enter the building that just exiled her. "They haven't cast the final vote yet, Ms. Miller," he says, his voice a low, resonant rumble. Melanie feels a spark of terror. Is he here to witness her execution or to deliver the blow himself? He walks past the guard, who steps aside instantly, leaving Melanie to follow in his wake. The boardroom is a tomb of mahogany and icy stares as the directors look up in shock. Marcus Thorne doesn't take a seat. He stands at the head of the table like a king. The chairman clears his throat, preparing to announce Melanie's termination and permanent industry blacklist. Marcus drops a thick, silver-embossed folder onto the table with a definitive, heavy thud. Thorne International is exercising its right of first refusal on the Miller restructuring, Marcus announces. The room goes silent as the directors scramble to process the legal maneuver he just executed. He has effectively placed Melanie's entire department under his personal, impenetrable legal protection. Melanie stands at the periphery, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The chairman looks from the folder to Marcus, his face reddening with impotent, mounting fury. Why would the man who owns the city risk his reputation for a woman labeled as a fraud? Marcus turns his back on the board. Before they can even offer a formal protest, he walks toward the exit, his stride measured and radiating an effortless, terrifying authority. As he passes Melanie, he pauses for a fraction of a second, his scent of cedarwood lingering. "Fix the clerical error, Ms. Miller," he says, his voice barely a whisper, meant only for her. "You have 48 hours before my lawyers can no longer hold the line," he adds. He doesn't wait for her thanks, nor does he offer her a reassuring smile or a nod. Melanie watches his retreating back, feeling the weight of the impossible task he just handed her. The board members are staring at her now, their hatred replaced by a confused, simmering curiosity. She is no longer a ghost, but she is now a target under a very bright, very expensive spotlight. How did a man she's never met know exactly when her world was about to end? The offices of Thorne International are a labyrinth of steel and silence as midnight passes. Melanie sits at a glass desk, surrounded by thousands of digital files and paper trails. Every line of code she scans feels like a trap designed to keep the truth buried forever. Her eyes ache from the blue light, but the fear of failing Marcus keeps her spine rigid. She finds a hidden subledger, a ghost file that shouldn't exist in the company's main server. Someone didn't just make a mistake. They meticulously carved a hole for the money to vanish. She realizes the clerical error was a surgical strike intended to destroy her specifically. The deeper she digs, the more she feels the presence of a shadow moving within the data. A soft sound at the door makes her jump, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone. Marcus Thorne is standing there holding 2 cups of coffee, watching her with an unreadable expression. He sets a cup on her desk, the steam rising between them like a fragile, shifting veil. "You're looking for a ghost in the machine, aren't you?" he asks, leaning against the doorframe. Melanie looks at the coffee, then at the man who has spent millions to buy her 2 days. "Why did you do it?" she asks, her voice cracking for the first time since the rain started. Marcus walks to the window, looking out at the city lights that he seems to personally oversee. "My father was a bookkeeper who found a hole just like that one," he says quietly. "They didn't give him 48 hours. They gave him a prison sentence and a broken name." Melanie realizes he isn't protecting her because she's an asset, but because she's a person. The perfect Melanie she spent years cultivating begins to crumble, leaving something raw and real behind. She sees a flicker of shared pain in his eyes, a bond forged in the fires of systemic injustice. "I found a signature," Melanie says, her voice regaining its sharp, professional edge. She turns the monitor toward him, showing a digital footprint hidden in the encrypted metadata. The signature belongs to a senior vice president within Thorne's own inner circle of executives. Marcus narrows his eyes, the stoic mask tightening as he recognizes the digital handwriting. "Julian Vane," he murmurs, his jaw setting in a hard, dangerous line of realization. Vane is Marcus's right hand, the man who manages the very compliance protocols they are currently bypassing. This isn't just a sabotage of Melanie. It's a coup designed to bring Marcus Thorne down with her. If the press finds out Marcus protected a fraud, Vane can force a vote of no confidence. The stakes have shifted from a single career to the fate of a global financial empire. Can Marcus afford to keep protecting her now that the knife is at his own throat? The elevator dings, and Julian Vane walks into the private floor, a shark-like smile on his face. He doesn't look at Melanie. His eyes are locked on Marcus with a predatory, mocking gleam. "The press is asking questions about your new consultant, Marcus," Vane says, gesturing toward Melanie. He tosses a tablet onto the desk, showing a headline about Marcus's unusual intervention. Vane is moving faster than they anticipated, leaking the story to force a premature confrontation. "Cut her loose now, and we can spin this as a momentary lapse in judgment," Vane suggests. Melanie watches Marcus, her heart sinking as she waits for the inevitable logical betrayal. Marcus looks at the headline, then back at the evidence Melanie just uncovered on the screen. He is a man of logic, and the logic says he should sacrifice the pawn to save the king. Marcus looks at Melanie, his gaze lingering on her trembling hands before he turns back to Vane. "Ms. Miller stays until the 48 hours are up," Marcus says, his voice like grinding stone. Vane's smile falters, replaced by a cold, calculating look of pure, unadulterated malice. "Then you go down with her when the board meets tomorrow morning," Vane threatens. He turns on his heel and exits, leaving a trail of heavy, suffocating tension in the room. Melanie looks at Marcus, the realization of what he's sacrificing hitting her with physical force. "You have to let me go," she whispers, standing up from the sea of incriminating data. "I won't let another person be destroyed by a convenient mistake," Marcus replies firmly. He moves closer, his presence providing a shield that no amount of money could ever buy. They are two people standing alone against a tide of corporate greed and engineered lies. Will the truth be enough to stop a man who has been planning this betrayal for years? The sun begins to bleed over the Manhattan skyline, painting the office in shades of bruised purple. Melanie turns back to the computer, her fingers flying across the keys with a new, frantic purpose. She isn't just looking for her innocence anymore. She is hunting for the weapon to save Marcus. She finds a series of offshore transfers linked to Vane's private accounts, hidden behind shell companies. The error wasn't just sabotage, it was a smokescreen for Vane to embezzle millions of dollars. She captures the final piece of the puzzle, a time-stamped authorization signed by Vane himself. She looks at Marcus, who is watching the sunrise, his silhouette a testament to weary, unbreakable strength. The 48 hours are almost up, and the final confrontation at the gala is only hours away. She holds the digital key to their salvation, but using it means stepping into the line of fire. Is she ready to lose everything to prove that justice is more than just a corporate buzzword? The black tie gala at the Met is a glittering cage of whispers and high-stakes judgment. Melanie smooths the silk of her emerald gown, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Beside her, Marcus moves with a lethal grace, his hand a steadying weight on her lower back. Every flash of a camera feels like a spotlight on a condemned woman walking to the gallows. Julian Vane stands at the center of a circle of investors, holding a champagne flute like a scepter. He catches Melanie's eye and offers a slow, mocking toast that sends a chill down her spine. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the metallic tang of impending slaughter. Marcus leans in, his breath warm against her ear, grounding her in the center of the storm. "Stay close to me, Melanie. The board is gathering in the private lounge behind the exhibit." She nods, clutching her beaded clutch which hides the flash drive containing Vane's financial ruin. They move through the crowd of elite power players who part like the Red Sea before Marcus. Julian Vane breaks away from his group, intercepting them before they can reach the private lounge. "A bold choice to bring the face of the Miller scandal to the year's biggest event, Marcus." Vane's voice is loud enough to draw the attention of nearby journalists and major shareholders. He pulls a smartphone from his pocket, displaying a breaking news alert from a top financial blog. The headline screams of Marcus Thorne's illegal shielding of a known corporate fraudster. A hush falls over the immediate area as guests turn to stare, their faces twisted in judgment. Melanie feels the old urge to flee, to hide in the rain where she can remain invisible. Marcus doesn't flinch, his gaze remaining fixed on Vane with a terrifying, icy detachment. "The night is young, Julian. I suggest you enjoy your drink while you still have one." Vane's face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated arrogance as he steps into Marcus's space. "The board has already called an emergency vote for tonight, right here in the West Wing." He leans in closer, his voice dropping to a hiss meant only for the three of them. "I have the proxies, Marcus. By midnight you'll be out, and she'll be in a jumpsuit." Marcus remains a statue of navy wool and iron will, refusing to give Vane the satisfaction of a reaction. Melanie feels the flash drive pressing against her palm through the fabric of her evening bag. She realizes Vane isn't just trying to win, he's trying to erase Marcus from the industry entirely. The weight of Marcus's sacrifice hits her. He is betting his entire legacy on her 48-hour vigil. A security detail approaches, led by the chairman of Thorne International, his expression grim and final. "Mr. Thorne, the committee is ready for you. Ms. Miller is not invited to the proceedings." The chairman points toward a pair of heavy oak doors, signaling the beginning of the end. Marcus turns to Melanie, his stoic mask cracking for a brief, vulnerable second of connection. "I'll handle the board. Find a way to verify the last transfer before they call for the vote." He is leaving her alone in a room full of people who want to see her fail. Melanie watches him walk toward the oak doors, his shoulders square even as the world closes in. Vane follows him, throwing a final, triumphant glance over his shoulder at the broken woman. She is left standing in the middle of the gala, a target for the cameras and the whispers. She needs a secure terminal, but Vane's security team is already tailing her from a distance. If she can't get to a network in the next 10 minutes, Marcus's career is over. She ducks into the shadows of the Egyptian exhibit, her mind racing through the museum's layout. The Temple of Dender is bathed in blue light, a silent witness to her desperate, quiet flight. Melanie finds a tech station used by the museum's curators near the back of the reflecting pool. She sits down, her fingers trembling as she plugs the flash drive into the terminal's port. A security guard rounds the corner, his radio crackling with a description that matches her dress. She ducks beneath the desk, her breath held so tight it hurts her lungs in the stillness. The guard passes by, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor like the ticking of a clock. She pops back up, watching the progress bar on the screen crawl toward a slow completion. The data is encrypted. Vane has used a secondary firewall that she didn't see in the office. She needs a Thorne executive bypass code, something only Marcus or Vane would possess. She remembers the coffee cup Marcus left on her desk, and the sticky note he used for the login. She types in the sequence of numbers Marcus had absent-mindedly scribbled during their 3:00 a.m. talk. The screen flashes green, and the final hidden ledger of the embezzlement scheme unfolds before her. It's not just millions. Vane has been selling Thorne's proprietary trade secrets to offshore rivals. This is more than corporate theft. It's industrial espionage that could trigger a federal investigation. The printer hums to life, spitting out the physical evidence of Vane's betrayal page by page. Suddenly, a hand slams down on the desk, stopping the printer with a violent, jarring jolt. Melanie looks up into the eyes of Vane's head of security, a man with a cold, scarred face. "Mr. Vane said you might try to be helpful, Ms. Miller. Give me the drive." She clutches the papers to her chest, the ink still warm against the emerald silk of her gown. The guard reaches for her, his hand closing around her wrist like a steel manacle. Melanie twists her arm, using the weight of her briefcase to swing at the guard's midsection. He grunts in surprise, his grip loosening just enough for her to tear herself away from the desk. She doesn't run for the exit. She runs toward the oak doors where the board is meeting. The guard recovers quickly, his heavy boots thudding behind her on the ancient stone floor. She bursts through the exhibit's curtain, back into the crowded gala, a blur of green and white. Guests gasp as she weaves through the tables, the security guard gaining ground with every stride. The oak doors are guarded by 2 more men, their faces set in grim, unyielding lines of defense. "Let her through," a voice booms from the top of the stairs, momentarily halting the chaos. It's Marcus's personal assistant, Sarah, who has been watching the perimeter for her arrival. Melanie reaches the doors, her lungs burning, the evidence clutched like a holy relic in her hand. Sarah pulls the doors open just as the security guard's fingers brush the back of Melanie's dress. Melanie stumbles into the boardroom, the sudden silence of the mahogany room a shock to her senses. The board members are seated around a table, their hands raised for the final decisive vote. Marcus is standing at the far end, his face a mask of exhaustion and unwavering, grim resolve. Julian Vane is mid-sentence, a smug smile playing on his lips as he prepares to claim his prize. "This meeting is over, Marcus. The vote is 3/4 in favor of your immediate resignation." Melanie slams the stack of papers onto the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the room. "The vote is based on a lie," she says, her voice steady and ringing with a new, earned power. Vane's smile vanishes, replaced by a flicker of genuine, pale-faced terror as he sees the logo. The chairman reaches for the top page, his eyes widening as he reads the first line of the ledger. The chairman looks from the papers to Julian Vane, his expression shifting from doubt to fury. "Julian, care to explain why your personal accounts are receiving funds from our primary competitor?" The other board members lean in, the raised hands slowly lowering as the weight of the truth hits. Vane attempts to speak, but the words die in his throat, his composure disintegrating into ash. Marcus moves toward Melanie, his presence a shield as he stands by her side at the table. "The 48 hours aren't up, Julian," Marcus says, his voice a low, lethal purr of triumph. Security enters the room, but this time they aren't looking for Melanie. They are looking for Vane. Vane is escorted out in a silence so thick it feels like the room has run out of oxygen. The chairman turns to Marcus, a look of profound, humbled apology written across his aged face. But Marcus isn't looking at the chairman. He is looking at the woman who just saved his world. The board members disperse, leaving Marcus and Melanie alone in the hollowed-out silence of the room. The adrenaline is fading, leaving Melanie trembling as the reality of the night finally catches up. Marcus reaches out, taking her hand in his palm warm and calloused against her skin. "You risked everything to come back into this building," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "You risked everything the moment you opened that car door in the rain," she replies softly. They stand together in the dim light, 2 survivors of a war that was never supposed to be theirs. The perfect Melanie is gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who knows her own worth. The stoic Marcus is gone, replaced by a man who no longer has to stand in moral solitude. But as they turn to leave, Melanie's phone buzzes with an encrypted message from an unknown sender. "You found the money, but you haven't found the person who hired Vane. Look at the logo again." The gala's golden light feels hollow as Melanie stares at the cryptic message on her screen. She traces the logo on the printed ledger, noticing a microscopic watermark hidden in the ink. It isn't a corporate seal, but a stylized S, entwined with a serpent's tail. Marcus watches her face go pale, his hand lingering on the small of her back. "The battle is over, Melanie. Vane is in custody, and your name is being cleared. She hands him the phone, the screen reflecting the cold, anonymous threat in his dark eyes. His jaw tightens, the victory in the boardroom suddenly feeling like a carefully laid trap. If Vane was just a puppet, the strings go higher than anyone in this building. The clerical error wasn't a mistake or a simple theft. It was a distraction. They aren't safe yet. They've only just stepped into a much larger, more dangerous game. The drive back to Thorne International is a tense, silent journey through a sleeping city. Marcus stares out the window, his mind clearly deconstructing his entire inner circle for traitors. Melanie clutches her bag, the adrenaline of the gala replaced by a cold, sharpening focus. They bypass the main lobby, taking Marcus's private elevator to the high-security server room. The air in the sub-basement is frigid, humming with the power of 1,000 cooling fans. The serpent logo belongs to the Sovereign Group, Marcus says, his voice a grim whisper. The Sovereign Group is a shadow conglomerate that buys and guts empires for sport. Melanie realizes that her old firm and Thorne International were being played against each other. The clerical error was the first domino in a hostile takeover attempt of both companies. She sits at the terminal, her fingers ready to hunt the serpent back to its nest. Marcus stands behind her, his presence a fortress of heat in the cold, humming room. If they're using our proprietary trade secrets, they must have a physical bridge, he notes. Melanie scans the network architecture, looking for any hardware that shouldn't be there. She finds a signal originating from a floor that supposedly doesn't exist in the blueprints. Floor 44 is listed as a mechanical space, yet it's drawing more power than the trading floor. They exit the server room, the silence of the building now feeling heavy and predatory. The elevator doors slide open at floor 44, revealing a hallway lit with flickering red emergency lights. The air smells of ozone and heated copper, a sharp contrast to the luxury of the floors above. They move cautiously, their shadows stretching long and distorted against the unfinished concrete walls. At the end of the hall, a heavy steel door stands slightly ajar, emitting a low, rhythmic pulse. The room inside is a high-tech war room, filled with monitors tracking global market shifts. Melanie gasps as she sees her own face on one of the screens, labeled as Variable Alpha. Marcus's face is beside hers, marked with a red target and a countdown timer. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a psychological operation designed to break them both. A man sits in a swivel chair, his back to them, watching the data streams with calm intensity. He turns slowly, revealing a face that is hauntingly familiar to Marcus, yet aged by bitterness. Hello, Marcus. I see you've brought the woman who was supposed to be your ruin. It is Elias Thorne, Marcus's older brother who was presumed dead in a plane crash a decade ago. The silence that follows is deafening, broken only by the hum of the servers and Marcus's breath. The invisible shield wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a challenge between blood and betrayal. Elias stands, his movements stiff but precise. A ghost returned to haunt the family legacy. You were always the favorite, the one the system chose to protect. Elias sneers. He gestures to the screens, showing how he orchestrated the scandal to bait Marcus into a trap. By saving Melanie, Marcus had bypassed compliance laws, giving Elias the leverage he needed. Vane was a disposable distraction, a sacrificial lamb to lead Marcus into this room. I didn't just want the company, Marcus. I wanted to see you fail by your own hand. Melanie realizes that her entire life's work was used as a pawn in a sibling's vendetta. She steps forward, her eyes flashing with a fury that surprises both Thorne brothers. You destroyed my reputation for a grudge? She asks, her voice low and dangerous. Elias laughs, a dry, rattling sound that has no warmth or humanity left in it. Marcus moves to stand in front of Melanie, shielding her from his brother's venomous gaze. The board won't follow a ghost, Elias. You have no standing, no legal claim to anything. Elias clicks a remote, and the screens change to show a live feed of the Thorne vaults. The proprietary secrets Vane stole were actually the encryption keys to the company's core assets. Elias has the power to liquidate everything Thorne International owns in a single keystroke. I don't need the board. I just need to press enter, and your empire becomes ash. Melanie looks at the code on the nearest monitor, her mind spotting a flaw in Elias's logic. The transfer protocol he's using requires a dual-key authentication from 2 different departments. He has the executive key from Marcus's bypass, but he doesn't have the clerical key. The error she was supposed to fix was actually the missing piece of Elias's master key. "You can't do it," Melanie says, her voice echoing with sudden sharp clarity in the room. Elias pauses, his thumb hovering over the button, his eyes narrowing at the disposable woman. "The error I found, I didn't just fix it, Elias. I rerouted the logic gate into a loop. By trying to clear her name, she inadvertently locked the very funds Elias is trying to steal. The 48-hour window Marcus gave her was the only time the system was vulnerable. Now that the window has closed, the clerical error has become an unbreakable digital vault." Elias's face turns a deep mottled red, his composure finally beginning to fracture into rage. He lunges for the keyboard, but Marcus is faster, pinning his brother against the desk. "It's over, Elias. The police are already on their way up from the gala." The siblings grapple, a decade of resentment exploding into a desperate, physical struggle for control. Melanie dives for the main console, her fingers flying to activate the building's lockdown. She needs to trap Elias's signal before he can broadcast the destruction to the global markets. The screen flashes, "Access denied," requiring a biometric scan from an authorized user. She looks at Marcus, who is struggling to keep Elias away from the execute button. "Marcus, the scanner!" she screams, gesturing to the glowing blue pad near his hand. Marcus manages to slam his palm onto the scanner even as Elias bites and claws at his arm. The system chimes "authorized," and the building's heavy shutters begin to slam shut. Elias screams in frustration, a sound of pure, primal loss as his decade-long plan dissolves. The monitors go dark one by one, the red targets on Melanie and Marcus's faces vanishing. The war room is plunged into a dim, pulsing red emergency light as the sirens wail outside. The police burst through the steel door, pulling Elias away from Marcus and onto the floor. Marcus stands up, his suit torn, his breathing heavy as he looks down at his fallen brother. There is no triumph in his expression, only a profound, hollow sadness for a family lost twice. Melanie walks over to him, her own emerald dress stained with dust and the sweat of the fight. They stand together as Elias is led away, the invisible shield finally settling into a permanent peace. The threat of the sovereign group remains, but the bridge they used has been burned to the ground. Marcus turns to Melanie, his eyes searching hers for the broken woman he found in the rain. He finds a partner, a woman who didn't just survive the storm, but learned to command it. "You saved more than just the company tonight, Melanie," he says, his voice thick with truth. He reaches out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear with a gentle, trembling hand. They walk out of the building together, the sun finally breaking over the skyline in a burst of gold. The news tickers are already changing, replacing scandal with Thorne heroism. Melanie looks up at the skyscraper, no longer feeling like a ghost or a target. She realizes her worth was never in her perfection, but in the resilience she found in the dark. Marcus stops at the curb, the same black sedan waiting for them, the engine a low, steady hum. "Where to now, Ms. Miller?" he asks, holding the door open for her one last time. "I think we have a few things to discuss regarding a new ethical oversight division." She smiles. As she steps into the car, she notices a small silver serpent pin dropped on the floorboard. The Sovereign Group isn't finished with them and the real game has only just begun. But this time they aren't standing alone. They are a team built on the strength of a shared fire. The silver pin glints on the leather seat like a serpent waiting to strike in the dark. Melanie's fingers hover over the cold metal, her breath hitching as the car pulls into traffic. Marcus follows her gaze, his expression hardening into a mask of lethal, focused intensity. "Don't touch it, Melanie. It's likely a tracker or a message for me," he warns. The chauffeur remains silent, his eyes fixed on the road, oblivious to the threat in the back. Melanie realizes the invisible shield has become a cage that they are trapped inside together. She looks out at the passing skyscrapers, wondering how many of them house sovereign agents. The victory over Elias feels like a shallow breath before a plunge into deep, icy water. They are being watched by an entity that doesn't care about boards or public scandals. Who can they trust when the enemy is already sitting in their most private spaces? The car arrives at Marcus's private estate, a fortress of stone and glass on the Hudson. Security teams with earpieces sweep the perimeter, their movements mechanical and cold. Marcus leads Melanie inside, the vast foyer echoing with the hollow sound of their footsteps. He goes straight to a wall-mounted safe, pulling out a burner phone and a handwritten ledger. The Sovereign Group doesn't just buy companies, they buy souls and secrets, Marcus explains quietly. He reveals that his father's mistake wasn't an accident, but a refusal to join their ranks. Melanie feels the weight of a multi-generational war settling onto her tired shoulders. She sees a photo of a young Marcus with his father, their smiles a ghost of a simpler life. The luxury of the estate feels like a gilded armor designed to keep the world at bay. If they're in the car, they're in my life, Melanie. And now they're in yours too. They retreat to the library, the walls lined with leather-bound books that hold no answers. Melanie opens her laptop, her fingers flying as she begins a deep dive into the Sovereign's shell. She finds a connection between the serpent logo and a defunct charity from the 90s. The St. Jude's Relief Fund was the same organization that handled her father's pension. A cold realization washes over her. Her father didn't just leave, he was disappeared. The instability of her childhood wasn't bad luck. It was a calculated erasure by the Sovereign. She isn't just a random manager Marcus saved. She was a target long before the scandal. Marcus watches her face, his concern growing as she uncovers the threads of her own past. They didn't choose you to destroy me, Marcus. They chose us to destroy each other. The question remains, what makes the two of them so dangerous to a shadow conglomerate? Suddenly the lights in the estate flicker once, then die, plunging them into total darkness. The backup generators hum to life, but they only provide a dim, flickering emergency red glow. The security monitors in the library go static, one by one, until only white noise remains. Marcus reaches into a desk drawer, pulling out a heavy, matte black handgun with practiced ease. "Stay behind me and don't make a sound," he commands, his voice a low, vibrating growl. They hear the muffled sound of a struggle in the hallway, followed by a heavy silence. The heavy oak doors of the library slowly creak open, revealing a figure in the shadows. It's the chairman of the board, the man who apologized to Marcus just hours ago. He isn't holding a weapon, but a small black remote that is pulsing with a red light. "I'm sorry, Marcus, but the Sovereign doesn't allow for loose ends or moral crusades. If you're enjoying this high-stakes corporate thriller, don't forget to like and subscribe to see if Melanie and Marcus survive the night. We want to know where our global audience is watching from. Comment your country below." The chairman steps into the red light, his face a mask of weary, resigned betrayal. "They have my family, Marcus. They've had them since the merger 10 years ago." He explains that the Sovereign Group controls the board through a system of refined, elegant blackmail. Every decision, every vote, and every scandal was orchestrated to maintain their invisible grip. Marcus doesn't lower the gun, his eyes burning with the fire of a man who has lost everything. "You let them destroy families. Let them erase people like Melanie's father." Marcus spits. The chairman looks at Melanie, a flicker of genuine, soul-deep pity crossing his features. "Your father wasn't erased, Melanie. He was the one who designed the Sovereign's first vault." The revelation hits her like a physical blow, making her knees buckle against the desk. Her father wasn't a victim. He was the architect of the very prison she's trying to break. The remote in the chairman's hand begins to beep faster, the light turning a solid, angry crimson. "They're coming for the ledger, Marcus. They won't leave anyone alive who has seen the names." He tells them there is a passage behind the fireplace that leads to the old boathouse. "Go now and don't look back. I'll give you as much time as a dying man can buy." The sound of heavy boots hits the foyer, followed by the distinctive thwip of silenced gunfire. Marcus grabs Melanie's hand, pulling her toward the hidden lever behind a row of law books. The fireplace slides open with a groan of stone, revealing a narrow, damp staircase. They scramble inside just as the library doors are kicked off their hinges by armored men. A muffled explosion rocks the house, the shockwave nearly throwing them down the stairs. Is the chairman's sacrifice enough to hide their trail, or are they walking into another trap? The tunnel is narrow and smells of salt and rot, leading them deep beneath the estate. Melanie's emerald dress is torn and caked with mud, a far cry from the gala's glamour. Marcus leads the way, his gun raised, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of pursuit. They reach the boathouse, the Hudson River churning violently against the wooden pilings. A small, high-powered speedboat is moored there, its engine already idling in the shadows. Marcus helps her in, his movements frantic as the sound of barking dogs echoes in the tunnel. "We can't go to the police and we can't go back to the city," he says, staring at the water. "They own the systems, Melanie. We have to find your father if we want to survive." He guns the engine, and the boat leaps forward into the dark, spray stinging their faces. Who else in their lives has been a puppet for the sovereign group this whole time? They kill the lights on the boat, navigating by the dim glow of the city's distant horizon. Melanie pulls out her laptop, which she managed to grab before the library was breached. She realizes the ledger Marcus had wasn't just a list of names, it was a map. The clerical error she fixed was a set of coordinates disguised as a financial transaction. The location isn't a bank or a warehouse, but a private island in the North Atlantic. "My father's code. It's a distress signal," she whispers, her heart racing with a new hope. He's been waiting for someone smart enough to find the error and brave enough to follow it. Marcus looks at her, the realization of the mission ahead settling into his weary features. They are no longer just fighting for a company or a reputation. They are fighting for the truth. But as she scrolls through the data, a hidden file opens, showing a video feed of the boat. The video is live, showing the back of Marcus's head as he steers them through the waves. Melanie realizes the boat itself is a sovereign asset, a gift meant to lead them to the island. She looks at the dashboard, noticing a small red X etched into the steering wheel. The sovereign group didn't want to kill them in the house. They wanted them to deliver the ledger. They are being steered exactly where the enemy wants them to go, like lambs to the slaughter. She looks at Marcus, wondering if he knows, or if he is part of the final deception. The invisible shield wasn't protecting her. It was preserving her for the sovereign's final act. Can she trust the man she's fallen for? Or is he the ultimate variable alpha in their game? She closes the laptop, her hand moving toward the flare gun stored in the side pocket. The boat hits a swell, and the distant outline of a fortress-like island appears on the horizon. The cold Atlantic spray turns to ice on Melanie's skin as the boat surges forward. She watches Marcus's steady hands on the wheel, searching for a tremor of guilt. The flare gun is a heavy plastic weight against her thigh, hidden by her torn dress. Her mind replayed the chairman's words. He was the one who designed the vault. If her father built the prison, Marcus might be the man holding the keys. Every wave they crash over feels like a deliberate step toward a prepared execution. The dark silhouette of the island grows, jagged cliffs rising like teeth from the Black Sea. "We're almost there, Melanie," Marcus says, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. She realizes he hasn't looked at her once since they cleared the Manhattan harbor. Is he leading her to a reunion with her father, or to her final silence? The boat slows as it enters a sea cave, the engine's echo becoming a deafening roar. Marcus kills the power, letting the momentum carry them toward a slick concrete pier. The silence that follows is thick with the smell of wet stone and ancient hidden rot. He jumps onto the pier, securing the line before reaching out a hand to help her. Melanie hesitates, her fingers tightening around the grip of the flare gun in her pocket. "I can't go in there until you tell me the truth about the variable alpha file." Marcus freezes, his silhouette framed by the faint moonlight at the cave's mouth. "I was tasked to watch you 3 years ago," he admits, his voice cracking. He finally turns, and in the dim light, she sees a man completely broken by his own lies. "But I didn't save you because I was told to. I saved you because I fell for the target." A sudden floodlight erupts from the ceiling, blinding them both in a harsh white glare. Armed men in gray tactical gear descend from the catwalks like spiders on silken threads. Marcus pulls his weapon, but a red laser dot settles squarely on the center of Melanie's chest. "Drop it, Marcus, or she becomes the latest clerical error in our ledger." A voice booms. It's a woman's voice, sharp and refined, echoing with the authority of absolute power. Marcus drops his gun, the clatter of metal on concrete sounding like a final, desperate prayer. The guards swarm them, pinning Marcus to the ground while a woman steps out from the shadows. She is impeccably dressed in a white suit, her eyes as cold and gray as the North Atlantic. "I am the director of the Sovereign Group," she says, looking at Melanie with a faint smile. "And you, my dear, are the only person who can unlock the vault your father left behind." They are dragged into an elevator that plunges deep into the heart of the island's bedrock. The doors open to a high-security lab where a man sits in a glass-walled observation room. Melanie's heart stops as she recognizes the slumped shoulders and the shock of white hair. "Dad?" she whispers, her voice barely audible over the hum of the facility's cooling fans. The man looks up, his eyes wide with a mixture of profound joy and soul-crushing terror. The director pushes Melanie toward a biometric console that looks identical to the one in Manhattan. "Your father built the Sovereign's heart, but he locked it behind a DNA-sequenced gate. He refused to open it for 10 years, waiting for the one person he knew would never give up. The Sovereign didn't just want Melanie. They needed her blood and her mind to claim the prize. If she refuses to cooperate, she has to watch the guards move a gun to her father's head." Marcus struggles against his captors, his face bruised and bleeding from the guards' boots. "Don't do it, Melanie. Once they have the keys, they don't need any of us alive." The director signals a guard who delivers a heavy blow to Marcus's ribs, silencing him. Melanie looks at her father, who is shaking his head in a desperate, silent plea for her to run. The ethical oversight she dreamed of was a fairy tale told to a girl in a storm. She realizes the 48-hour window was a countdown to this very moment of impossible choice. The world's financial stability is hidden behind this door, and the Sovereign wants to bleed it dry. Her hand hovers over the scanner, the blue light reflecting in her tear-filled, glassy eyes. If she saves her father, she destroys the world. If she refuses, she loses him again forever. The director places a cold hand on Melanie's shoulder, a gesture of mock maternal comfort. "Think of the lives you can save with this power, Melanie." The director whispers in her ear. "We can end the instability you feared as a child, create a world of perfect engineered order." Melanie looks at the screen, seeing the complex algorithms her father designed to protect the truth. She notices a familiar pattern in the code, the same clerical error she fixed in the office. It wasn't a mistake. It was a backdoor her father left specifically for her to find. He didn't want her to unlock the vault. He wanted her to trigger the self-destruct sequence. But the sequence requires two people to act in perfect, simultaneous harmony at two terminals. She looks at Marcus, trying to communicate the plan through a single, desperate glance. He meets her eyes, the pain in his expression replaced by a flash of sudden, sharp understanding. Can they execute a digital suicide mission before the guards realize they've been played? Melanie places her hand on the scanner, feeling the needle prick of the DNA sampler. "Accessing Sovereign Core," the computer announces, its voice a hollow, synthesized drone. Across the room, Marcus kicks out at a guard's knee, lunging for a secondary security terminal. The room erupts into chaos as the director screams for the guards to stop him at any cost. Melanie's fingers fly across the glass, inputting the override codes she memorized in the library. The clerical error begins to expand, eating through the Sovereign's firewalls like a digital virus. Red lights flash throughout the lab, and a low-frequency alarm begins to vibrate in the floorboards. "What have you done?" the director shrieks, pulling a small silver pistol from her jacket. Melanie doesn't flinch, her eyes fixed on the progress bar that is rapidly turning from green to black. The vault isn't opening. It's collapsing into a void of encrypted, unrecoverable noise. The director fires, the bullet grazing Melanie's shoulder and shattering the glass of the observation room. Melanie falls to the floor, the pain a white-hot bloom of agony that steals her breath away. Her father rushes out of the shattered room, shielding her body with his own frail, aging frame. Marcus reaches the terminal, slamming his fist onto the final purge button with a roar of defiance. The facility's main power grid groans under the stress of the massive data deletion. Monitors explode in showers of sparks, and the ceiling begins to weep dust and small stones. The Sovereign Group's entire archive, Every soul they bought, every secret they held, is vanishing. The director stands paralyzed, watching her empire dissolve into a series of file not found errors. The downward spiral has reached its end, and the only thing left is the fire. Will the three of them be consumed by the very destruction they just unleashed? The guards flee as the structural integrity of the sea cave begins to fail under the pressure. Marcus stumbles toward Melanie and her father, his suit ruined and his strength nearly gone. The boat. We have to get to the boat before the cave collapses. He shouts over the alarms. He scoops Melanie into his arms, her blood staining the remains of his white dress shirt. Her father grips Marcus's shoulder, his legs weak but his spirit finally, miraculously free. They run through the crumbling lab, the sounds of shifting rock drowning out the sirens. Behind them, the director remains among her broken screens, a queen of a dead, silent kingdom. The elevator is dead, forcing them to climb the emergency stairs as the walls groan in protest. Every step is a battle against the falling debris and the suffocating smoke of burning circuits. Is this the end of the Miller legacy, or the beginning of a life worth living? They burst onto the concrete pier, just as the first section of the sea cave roof hits the water. The speedboat is still moored there, bobbing violently in the turbulent rising tide. Marcus tosses Melanie into the seat, her father scrambling in behind her with frantic haste. The engine coughs once, twice, then roars to life with a desperate mechanical scream. Marcus guns the throttle, the boat leaping into the darkness just as the pier is swallowed by rock. A massive plume of water and smoke erupts behind them, marking the grave of the sovereign's heart. They head out into the open sea, the horizon still miles away and the fuel gauge dropping. Melanie clings to her father's hand, her other hand reaching for Marcus in the dark. They are three ghosts on a sinking boat, with no money, no names, and no place to hide. As the sun begins to rise, a fleet of black helicopters appears in the distance, closing fast. The black helicopters bank over the churning Atlantic, their rotors beating a rhythm of certain doom. Melanie presses a hand to her bleeding shoulder, the salt air stinging her open wound. Marcus grips the wheel, his eyes scanning the horizon for a miracle that isn't coming. Her father, Arthur, huddles beside her, his hands trembling as he watches the sky. One helicopter descends, its spotlight pinning the small boat in a blinding vertical cage of light. The thwip of a loudspeaker cuts through the roar of the wind, demanding they cut the engine. Melanie looks at Marcus, seeing the same raw defiance that first led him to the rain-slicked sidewalk. "They aren't firing," she whispers, her voice barely a thread above the crashing waves. Marcus narrows his eyes, noticing the lack of sovereign markings on the dark metal fuselages. Instead of a serpent, the lead bird carries a simple silver crest of the International Court. The helicopters don't attack. They hover in a protective circle, shielding the boat from the wind. A winch cable drops from the sky, a rescue harness swaying toward the deck like a lifeline. "Marcus Thorne, this is Interpol Task Force Alpha. We have the director in custody." The voice is calm, authoritative, and lacks the predatory edge of the Sovereign Group. It turns out the final purge triggered a global silent alarm Melanie's father had hidden years ago. The deletion of the files didn't just burn the data, it broadcasted the Sovereign's crimes to every world government. The black helicopters were the cavalry, led by the evidence Melanie had sent from the gala. Melanie feels the tension drain from her body, her head falling back against the vinyl seat. Marcus reaches for her, his hand steadying her as the harness is secured around her waist. For the first time in 48 hours, the invisible shield is made of justice, not secrets. They are lifted into the belly of the lead helicopter, the cabin smelling of oil and safety. A medic immediately tends to Melanie's shoulder, the sharp sting of antiseptic bringing her back to reality. Arthur sits across from them, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket, his eyes finally clearing of fog. "You did it, Mel," he says, his voice thick with a decade of unspeakable, lonely pride. Marcus sits on the floor beside her, refusing medical attention until he knows she is stable. The agent in charge hands Marcus a satellite phone, his expression one of profound, grim respect. "The world's markets are in shock, Mr. Thorne, but the contagion has been successfully contained." Melanie realizes that by destroying the Sovereign, They've saved the very system that tried to crush her. She looks at the bandage on her arm, a permanent mark of the price she paid for her name. The helicopter turns toward the New York skyline, the sun finally burning through the morning haze. They land on the roof of a secure government facility in Lower Manhattan, far from the prying press. The air is crisp, and the familiar scent of the city acts as a balm to their frayed nerves. Melanie walks with a limp, supported by Marcus on one side and her father on the other. They are led to a private briefing room where the Attorney General is already waiting. The evidence recovered from the island is enough to dismantle the sovereign for good, he says. But there is a catch, a shadow that still lingers in the corners of the corporate world. While the head of the serpent is gone, the body is made of thousands of smaller hidden cells. Melanie is offered a choice: enter witness protection or help rebuild the ruins of the industry. She looks at Marcus, whose empire is now a fractured skeleton of what it once was. "I'm not running anymore," she says, her voice ringing with an ironclad, quiet authority. Marcus leads them to a small private garden on the facility's terrace, away from the lawyers. The city hums below them, a sprawling beast that is finally beginning to wake up. "I lost the company, Melanie," Marcus says, looking out at the skyscrapers he no longer owns. The board has dissolved, the assets are frozen, and the Thorne name is a synonym for a war zone. Melanie walks to the edge of the terrace, the wind catching the tattered remnants of her dress. "You didn't lose the company, Marcus. You traded a cage for a foundation," she replies. She takes his hand, her fingers interlaced with his, a silent promise of a different kind of future. The perfect Melanie would have mourned the loss of the status and the high-rise office. But the woman standing in the sunlight knows that true power is found in what survives the fire. She sees a glimmer of hope in his eyes, a spark of the man who risked everything for a stranger. Arthur joins them, looking younger now that the weight of the sovereign's vault is gone. "I kept one thing," he says, pulling a small battered USB drive from his tattered sleeve. "It isn't a weapon or a list of secrets, but a patent for a new, transparent financial architecture. A system that can't be manipulated by shadows," Arthur explains, handing it to Melanie. "This is the ethical oversight she wanted, a way to ensure no one else has ever disappeared." Melanie looks at the drive, then at Marcus, the blueprint for their next act finally in her hand. They can't go back to their old lives, but they can build something better from the ashes. The morning light is gold and pure, washing away the gray grit of the last 48 hours. They are no longer targets or variables. They are the architects of a new, honest world. But as they turn to go inside, Marcus's phone rings with a number he thought was disconnected. The caller ID displays a single name: Elias. Marcus's breath hitches, his thumb hovering over the accept button as his pulse quickens. "I thought he was in federal custody," Melanie whispers, her heart sinking back into her chest. Marcus answers, putting it on speaker so they can all hear the ghost's chilling voice. "Did you really think one purge could kill a god, brother?" Elias asks, his voice like silk. He claims he was never in the van that went to the precinct. A decoy took his place. Elias is still out there, and he has the final encryption key that Melanie's purge couldn't touch. The sovereign isn't a group of people. It's a protocol that is now self-executing. The glimmer of hope begins to flicker as the sound of a distant explosion echoes from the docks. The war isn't over. It has just moved from the boardroom to the streets of the city they love. They rush to the edge of the terrace, seeing a plume of black smoke rising from the harbor. It's the warehouse where the Interpol evidence was being logged and processed. Elias isn't just trying to survive. He's systematically erasing the proof of his own existence. The sirens begin to wail again, a discordant symphony that marks the return of the chaos. Marcus looks at Melanie, the protective instinct returning to his eyes with a fierce intensity. "He's coming for the drive your father gave you," Marcus realizes, his jaw tightening. They are the only ones left who know the truth, making them the final targets of the protocol. Arthur grips Melanie's arm, his face pale as he realizes his distress signal has a countermove. They have to find Elias before he can vanish back into the shadows of the global grid. How do you fight a man who is already a ghost in a world of digital footprints? "We need a bait," Melanie says, her mind clicking into a high-speed tactical gear. She looks at the USB drive in her hand, the key to a future that Elias wants to burn. If they broadcast a leak of the new architecture, Elias will have to come to them to stop it. He can't let a transparent system exist. It would be the permanent end of his shadow empire. Marcus nods, understanding the risk of putting her back in the crosshairs of a madman. We do it at the Miller and Associates building, Melanie decides, choosing the site of her fall. She wants to end this where it began, reclaiming the ground where she was first destroyed. They have 2 hours before Elias can scrub the rest of the Interpol servers and vanish. The glimmer of hope is now a torch they must carry into the heart of the enemy's darkness. Are they strong enough to face the ghost of the Thorne family one last time? They prepare to move, the Interpol team providing a covert escort through the back alleys. Melanie changes into a simple suit, her movements sharp and focused despite the pain in her shoulder. Marcus checks his weapon, his expression one of a man who has accepted his final mission. Arthur stays behind in the secure room, his fingers ready to broadcast the leak on Melanie's signal. "Be careful, Mel," her father says, his eyes filled with a terrifying, paternal dread. She kisses his cheek, a silent goodbye to the girl she used to be before the rain started. The car waits in the basement, its engine a low, predatory growl in the concrete silence. As they drive toward the financial district, the city looks different, vulnerable and fragile. They are the invisible shield now, the only thing standing between order and total digital anarchy. The skyscraper looms ahead, a glass tomb waiting for its final, decisive confrontation. The lobby of Miller and Associates is a tomb of polished marble and flickering emergency lights. Melanie steps onto the familiar floor, her heels clicking against the cold, echoing stone. Behind her, Marcus moves like a shadow, his weapon drawn and his eyes scanning the balconies. The air smells of ozone and the stale, lingering scent of expensive corporate coffee. She reaches the central server terminal, plugging in the drive that carries her father's legacy. A blue progress bar appears on the massive lobby screen, broadcasting the transparent leak. The signal begins to pulse, a beacon designed to draw the ghost from the machine. High above, the sound of a private elevator descending hums through the hollow building. "He's here," Marcus whispers, stepping into the darkness behind a massive marble pillar. Melanie stands alone in the center of the light, the ultimate bait for a digital god. The elevator doors slide open with a soft chime that sounds like a funeral bell. Elias Thorne steps out, looking like a man who has already won a war of attrition. He holds a detonator in one hand and a tablet displaying the leak's progress in the other. "You're playing a dangerous game with a ghost, Ms. Miller," he says, his voice mocking. He doesn't look at the shadows where Marcus hides. His eyes are fixed on the terminal. Melanie doesn't flinch, her hand hovering over the execute key that will finalize the broadcast. "The protocol dies tonight, Elias. The world is about to see every face behind the serpent." Elias laughs, the sound echoing through the empty lobby like the rattle of dry bones. "You think this building is a fortress, but I'm the one who designed the security overrides." He presses a button on his tablet, and the lobby doors slam shut with a violent, mechanical thud. Marcus steps out from the shadows, his gun leveled at his brother's steady, unmoving heart. "It's over, Elias. Drop the detonator and tell the protocol to stand down," Marcus commands. Elias doesn't look at the gun. He looks at Marcus with a twisted, chilling sort of pity. "The protocol can't be stopped by a bullet, brother. It's a living algorithm now." He explains that if the leak reaches 100%, the building's gas lines will ignite. He has rigged the foundations to erase the evidence and everyone inside the blast radius. The progress bar hits 80%, the blue light bathing the room in a sickly cold glow. Melanie realizes the transparent architecture is the only thing Elias truly fears. If the truth gets out, his power vanishes. But if the building blows, the truth dies with them. The choice is between their lives and the freedom of the global financial system. "You won't do it," Melanie says, her voice steady despite the sweat trickling down her neck. "You're a narcissist, Elias. You can't rule a kingdom of ash and burnt ledgers." Elias's finger twitches on the detonator. his calm facade finally beginning to crack into rage. He lunges for the terminal, but Marcus fires a warning shot that shatters the marble at his feet. "Stay back!" Marcus roars, the pain of a lifetime of betrayal exploding in his voice. Elias stops, his eyes darting between the gun and the progress bar hitting 90%. The building begins to groan as the gas pressure builds in the sub-basement pipes. Melanie's fingers fly across the secondary keyboard, trying to vent the lines before the spark. She finds the manual override, but it requires someone to hold the lever in the basement. It's a suicide mission, a physical act that no digital code can ever replicate or replace. "I'll go," Marcus says, locking eyes with Melanie in a moment of silent, devastating clarity. "No, Marcus, we can find another way," she screams, reaching out to grab his sleeve. He gently pries her hand away, his touch a final, lingering caress of shared history. "Keep the broadcast running. Make sure my father's name is cleared with yours," he says. He turns and sprints toward the service stairs, leaving Melanie alone with the madman. Elias sees his chance and lunges for Melanie, his hands clawing for the USB drive. She swings her briefcase, the heavy leather striking him across the face with a dull thud. He falls, blood blooming on his lip, but he manages to grab her ankle and pull her down. They struggle on the floor, the perfect Melanie fighting like a woman with nothing left to lose. The progress bar hits 98% and the floor begins to vibrate with a low, hungry hum. Deep in the basement, Marcus finds the iron lever, the heat from the pipe searing his skin. He grabs the metal, the weight of the entire building's destruction pressing against his palms. He pulls with every ounce of strength, his muscles screaming as the rusted gear finally turns. Above him, the gas vents hiss with a deafening roar, releasing the pressure into the rainy night. He is trapped in a room filling with toxic fumes, his vision beginning to blur into gray. "Do it, Melanie." He gasps into his radio, his voice fading into a ragged, thin whisper. In the lobby, Melanie kicks Elias away and slams her hand onto the enter key. The screen flashes gold as the data is broadcast to every news agency on the planet. The sovereign protocol is dismantled, its code shredded by the transparency of her father's design. Elias screams as his tablet goes dark, his empire vanishing into a billion shards of light. Elias lunges one last time, but the lobby doors are blown open by an Interpol breaching charge. The ghost is tackled to the floor, his detonator kicked away across the polished marble. Melanie doesn't wait to see him handcuffed. She sprints toward the basement stairs. The air is thick with the smell of gas, and her lungs burn with every desperate breath. She finds Marcus slumped against the lever, his eyes closed and his face a ghostly pale. "Marcus, wake up," she cries, pulling him away from the hissing pipes and into the hall. She drags him toward the service elevator, her strength fueled by a raw, primal refusal to let go. The elevator rises slowly, the seconds feeling like hours as she begs him to breathe. When they reach the roof, the rain is falling again, cool and sweet against their heated skin. He coughs, his lungs drawing in the fresh air, and his eyes flutter open to find hers. They lie on the rooftop, the Manhattan skyline glowing with the news of the sovereign's fall. Below them, the city is a hive of activity, but up here there is only the sound of rain. The invisible shield is no longer a corporate myth. It's the bond between the two of them. Elias is being led away in chains, his shadow finally excised from the Thorne family tree. Arthur emerges from the stairwell, his face streaked with tears as he sees them both alive. The three of them stand together, a broken family made whole by the fire they just survived. "We cleared the error, Dad," Melanie says, leaning her head against her father's shoulder. Marcus stands up, shaky but resolute, and takes Melanie's hand in a firm, steady grip. The scandal is over, the truth is out, and the morning sun is finally starting to rise. But as the sun hits the horizon, a single black envelope is tucked into Melanie's pocket. Who could have placed a message on her person in the middle of a tactical breach? She opens the envelope to find a simple card with a gold-embossed S and a new date. "The Sovereign is a cycle, not a company. See you at the inauguration," the card reads. The final confrontation was just a weeding of the week, and the true masters remain hidden. Melanie looks at Marcus, the weight of the sequel hook settling into the silence between them. They have won the battle, but the war for the soul of the world has only just begun. She tucks the card away, her face hardening into the mask of a woman who is ready. "We aren't done, are we?" Marcus asks, his gaze following hers to the rising sun. "No," she replies, her voice a cold promise of the vengeance still to come. "We're just getting started." The skyscraper that once felt like a tomb is now bathed in the clear, honest light of dawn. Melanie stands on the rooftop, the black envelope heavy with the weight of an unfinished war. The S on the card mocks her, a reminder that the serpent can shed its skin to survive. Marcus stands beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of the railing, watching the city wake. The sirens have faded into a distant hum, replaced by the rhythm of a recovering metropolis. Arthur watches from the doorway, a man who has returned from the dead to see a new world. They have dismantled the machine, but the ghosts of the mechanics are still drifting in the fog. Melanie looks at her reflection in the glass, no longer seeing a victim or a corporate pawn. She sees a guardian, the first line of defense against the cycle that the card promised. The invisible shield is no longer a corporate lie. It is her new, singular purpose. If you want to see Melanie and Marcus take on the true masters of the cycle, like and subscribe now. The truth is only as strong as those who defend it. Comment the word integrity below if you believe power belongs to the transparent. 6 months later, the name Miller and Associates has been wiped from the face of the building. In its place stands the Thorne Miller Foundation, a beacon of glass and light in the district. Melanie walks through the lobby, her stride radiating a power that doesn't need a title to command. She is no longer a hedge fund manager. She is the lead architect of the Global Transparency Act. The halls are filled with young professionals from every background, protected by her father's code. Arthur sits in the research wing, mentoring a new generation of hackers turned heroes. The clerical error that once nearly destroyed her is now the foundation of the world's safety. She enters her office, where the walls are decorated with maps of the sovereign's remaining cells. Marcus is there, looking at a digital display of a mysterious inauguration happening in Geneva. "The invitation was real, Melanie. The shadow is moving to a new host," he says. Marcus has rebuilt his fortune not as a titan of industry, but as a funder of justice. He wears a suit that fits him like armor, his eyes reflecting a man who has found his true north. "We have the flight plans, the bank records, and the names of the new council," he adds. Melanie joins him at the desk, their shoulders brushing in a silent, familiar show of strength. The romantic tension of the rainy streets has hardened into a deep, unbreakable partnership. They are the only ones who know that the war didn't end in the lobby of her old firm. The Sovereign Group is a hydra, and they have spent every waking hour sharpening their blades. "Geneva is just the beginning," Melanie says, her voice cold and sharp as a diamond. She pulls the black card from her desk drawer and sets it on fire with a silver lighter. They watch the S curl into ash, the final remnant of the fear that once controlled them. The phone on the desk rings, a secure line that only one other person in the world possesses. It is the director, calling from a high-security prison where she is awaiting a lifetime of silence. "They've already replaced me, Melanie." The woman's voice crackles with a chilling, hollow mirth. "The man you're looking for isn't a businessman. He's a politician you've trusted for years." Melanie looks at Marcus, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place with a sickening thud. The inauguration isn't for a corporation. It's for the highest office in the country. The sovereign has moved from the boardrooms to the ballots, seeking to own the law itself. Melanie's eyes harden, her resolve becoming a cold white flame that will never be extinguished. "Then we'll have to show the world that even a god can be impeached," she says into the line. She hangs up, her fingers already flying across the keys to begin the final global hunt. They walk toward the private elevator, their shadows long and determined against the white floor. The city of Manhattan stretches out before them, a world they have sworn to protect at any cost. The invisible shield is now a global network, a brotherhood of truth against the dark. Marcus holds the door for her, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips for the first time. "Ready to change the world again, Ms. Miller?" he asks, his voice full of a lethal, quiet hope. "I'm ready to end the cycle, Marcus," she replies, stepping into the lift with her head held high. The doors slide shut, leaving the office empty and the city humming with a secret, growing fire. The truth is out, but the battle for who gets to write the future is only just beginning. A new name appears on the lobby's digital ticker: the Architects. The screen flickers once, a silver serpent tail appearing for a fraction of a second, then vanishing.